Okay, so when you look ahead, like you mentioned, Theo, it's been about a decade where things got tight again. 2023 She Believes Cup in Nashville, USA beats Japan 1-0 thanks to Mal Swanson. And then in the 2024 Olympic quarterfinals, the same score, 1-0, the US wins Trinity Rodman in the 105th minute in Paris. And then most recently, the She Believes Cup in 2025, USA 1 falls to Japan 2. Tamara, the game you mentioned at the top of the show, that match back in San Diego. So yes, the sizzles are back, the feels are back. But when you look at the U.S. women's national team as a whole, let's say over the last 10 to 15 years, where do you put Japan as a U.S. women's national team rival?
It's so interesting because it's almost like I want to come up with a different word to describe the dynamic and the relationship and the history between these two teams. Because I think of other national teams like the U.S.'s continental rivals in Canada and Mexico. And the temperature and flavor of those rivalries is so much more similar than what I would ascribe to the U.S. and Japan. I think that when the U.S. suits up to play against Canada, they're low-key, packing. You know what I mean?
They're ready for a fight.
Yeah.
Japan is, it's true. Japan is not a fight. It's
Japan, it's
dance.
Yeah. There's just something so much more. And I want to use the word respect, but I don't want to imply that they don't respect Canada and Mexico.
No,
but it's just different. I think it's because they played each other so many times. And of course, yes, the U.S. has played Canada a bunch of times too. But I think that maybe it's because Japan's style of play is both so different from the foundation of the U.S. style of play historically, which I would say is way more similar to Canada's and probably less so, but still similar to Mexico's as well. But this is what I think makes U.S.-Japan such an enticing matchup, no matter where you are in the timeline. The style of play is so different, but it's the perfect complement. They complement each other so well. And I think what both teams get out of playing each other supplements their styles so well too that it reminds me of when I used to play. There was that opponent that you always didn't even hide how much you were looking forward to playing them because you just knew, regardless of the result, that you were going to get better as a result of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly Emma Hayes' outlook, obviously, in booking this team 3 times. That it's not going to be foul city like we saw a few weeks ago. Maybe no punches thrown, but it is going to be good, methodical soccer. So rivalry is a tough word because the U.S. is dominated, but I still think when you've been defined by big moments, it almost can jumpstart into that because you just look at those 2 World Cup finals and, Japan taking one on penalties and then the U.S. kind of coming in and dominating in the second. It can come down to a few big moments.
I think, T, I want to kind of hear you. For anyone who maybe isn't familiar, can you define Japan's style of play? Because you mentioned there that it complements or it contrasts with the US. And I think there's an element of when Emma Hayes came in, she wanted to reinvigorate or adapt, let's say, the US style of play. And I think she sees Japan as a way of iron sharpening iron. So for anyone who maybe isn't familiar, when you say Japan's style of play, could you go into a little bit more detail there?
I think the more that I've been researching and learning and having conversations with people about Japan, whose team name is Nadeshiko, I think a lot of Spain, to be honest with you, in terms of the intentionality that goes into building the foundation of their federation, in terms of the youth academies, in terms of the close attention to detail that this team trains with. It is so crisp. These players are technically excellent. They like to play through the midfield. They do their own sort of version of tiki-taka, which is why I think Spain is a helpful sort of comparison if you've not seen this team play or haven't paid close attention to it. And something that I think people might assume is not the case that I want to correct and say very much is Japan is a physical team, but their physicality is of a different shade, let's say, than we're used to seeing in the U.S. So I watch someone like Yui Hasegawa. And if you know me, or if you listen to this show and listen for any opportunity I have to sprinkle some respect on that Manchester City midfielder, you know how I feel about her. But what I think makes her game so exceptional is the way she engages her weight distribution. And it allows her to go up against pretty much any player in the Women's Super League. So when you watch Japan play, it might be easy to think, if you have some preconceived notions about what an Asian football team might bring to the table, that they're not going to be aggressive. You would be wrong, saying it with love. They are. It just looks very different from what you see mostly in the NWSL. But the thing is, there are many Japanese players in the NWSL now, many of whom play for the national team. And what I think has sort of allowed Nadeshiko to sort of unlock and shift gears into this next level, which is resulting in this sort of tightening of the rivalry that we're seeing now, is the fact that so many of them are featuring crucially and centrally to top clubs, not only in the NWSL, but across Europe too. So they're adding to their toolkits individually and then coming back together and proving to be pretty unstoppable. So I forgot what the question was. I'm so sorry. This is what happens when I start talking about Japan.
Japan's style of play. Japan's style of play. Great midfield, right? I think that's what we know of Japan. They always want to play. They move. I also think the difference
Which also
they have,
serves this parallel with Spain, you could say.
Yes. I think the difference between Spain and Japan, in my opinion, is I do think what Japan do really well is they can move up the pitch quicker than Spain. Like, if you think about tiki-taka in its most traditional form being like all about where you are in a position on a grid, I actually think what's interesting about Japan is they're happy to play it out from the back. They're happy to like absorb pressure. But when they see a break, they move really fast and almost like they want you to press them, because Yui Hasegawa, right, is so press resistant. So she wants you to come up and get close to her so she can swivel her hips and come out of pressure. And the pressure, the space the player leaves by pressing her is exactly what she wants. So I think Japan invite pressure, I think, differently to a team like Spain that want to dominate the ball. I actually think Japan, and to any listener who's like, okay, what do you mean? Go and watch Japan beating Spain 4-0 at the 2023 World Cup in New Zealand. That performance is one of the best counter-attacking, quick vertical tiki-taka performances you'll ever see. And I think it gets across Japan's style of play really well.
Love it. Perfect game to put on the syllabus.
Perfect game to put on the syllabus, yeah.